Good morning, everybody. All right. Lively. We're here to talk about youth sports. My name's Matt Geschke, and I have the privilege of leading the social and community impact team at Nike for the Americas. I'm here to talk about youth sport. And I also am a dad of an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. So what I think is the most important thing for us to do, so we're in that mindset, is think about that time when you were playing youth sports. Think about that coach who had an impact on you. Think about those teammates who might still be your friends, and you're still telling those same stories you had told. Might have happened 30 years ago. And some of those same lessons that you learned, that you still apply today. Kids need that now more than ever. But we also know that there are challenges, access, experience, and even perception. Is sport for me? Do I belong here? Is this a place that I want to be in? We also know, similar to the K economy, we have the sport K. Kids that have access are participating, and kids that don't are dropping out. We feel like we have a solution. We have been committed to this work for a long time at Nike. We also are seeing a lot of movement at the grassroots level. And not just nonprofits asking for funding to do great work, but nonprofits banding together to use their collective power to advocate on behalf of the youth, for policy change, for additional funding and support in areas that traditionally they have not operated in. That's systemic change. That's what we want to get after. We want a movement that is sustainable and lasting and leads to real change. We work with a partner called the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport. They really focus on centering the child in the community. They are committed to the fact that sport can heal individuals and communities. They've been an amazing partner. And about 6 years ago, they started organizing in different cities across the United States. Nonprofits that work with maybe 50, 60 kids that are volunteer-based, that are working just on those city blocks or community organizations. They brought them together and said, together we are stronger and we can make a significant impact. We were an early investor there. Things started to gain some momentum. We're now expanding that work. We have coalitions that are operating in 18 cities across the United States now. Let's take Chicago, for example. It's the longest one that's been operating. 25% of all kids in the city of Chicago are part of organizations that are in that coalition. That's real change. And because of that, that group has now advocated and unlocked $15 million from the state budget in Illinois and is the first state to set up a youth sports coalition. That has been used in California. We're seeing policy change in Seattle. You're going to hear from one of our speakers about how she has driven the coalition work in Philadelphia. There is real, true momentum here. And because of that, we launched the MOVE Fund, which is a group of shared, valued investors to bring access to sport for all kids. Our goal is to raise $30 million by 2030 and pour that into coalitions across the United States. Nike has made a 4-year commitment to that already, and we are excited for the way things are moving. We have a lot of momentum at our backs right now. And if you think about the landscape of what's ahead of us, this summer and into 2028, 2031, and 2034, we have the sports world and the world's attention. Now is our time to move. And if you are a funder and sport is not in your portfolio, think about it. If you're looking at mental health and supporting children, sports should be in your portfolio. If you're thinking about community development, sports should be in your portfolio. If you are thinking about positive youth development, there is no way that sports should not be in your portfolio. So as we continue this work moving forward, I invite you all to understand the power of sport by reflecting at that time when you were young and all that joy in those relationships. Kids need that now more than ever. And I think what you'll hear this morning is how that is being applied across various mediums, in various communities, with different techniques. But it is all adding up to create an incredible amount of momentum at the grassroots space, which we have never seen in youth sports before. So it's my pleasure to welcome up our panel. We have Vanessa Garcia-Brito, who is the Chief Impact Officer of Nike. Jeremiah Brown, former NFL athlete and Players Coalition advocate. Bethanne Devine, who leads the Philadelphia Youth Sports Collaborative. And Pharlone Toussaint, the Senior Director for the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport.
Thanks so much, Matt. It's so great to be here with all of you. Thank you all for being here. And that's like a real expression of appreciation, because I know that there are so many options out there. It's a busy, busy schedule with some really exciting conversations happening everywhere. And we're just really grateful that you chose to spend some of this time with us here today to talk about how to create a connected, resilient ecosystem for youth sport. And really, you know, if you're here, the conversation we're going to have is about how we do that to make sure that it's lasting and has positive outcomes for young people in the communities that are all around them. So as Matt mentioned, I have the honor of serving as Nike's VP and Chief Impact Officer, which means that I also have a privilege of leading a team that is obsessing the future of youth sport. You know, we're obsessing about how to create a world where all youth know and feel that they belong in sport. We're obsessing how to make sure that we're creating a world where all youth know that they have an opportunity to achieve their full potential. And we want, you know, it's not something that only our team focuses on, because at Nike, this work really is at the heart of our mission, which is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. We believe that if you have a body, you are an athlete. Congratulations, you're all athletes. So I give to you, don't, you know, whether you're in here or out there, wherever you're hearing this, you're an athlete. Don't forget that, that's super important. And, you know, we wanna make sure that all youth feel and know that that's true for them as well. But to do that, we need to reimagine the youth sport ecosystem. And that's not something that any one person or organization can do on their own, which is why I'm so thrilled to be here with you and continue a conversation that actually we kicked off right here this time last year at South by Southwest, where I was joined by the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport, the Ford Foundation, and track and field Paralympian Scout Bassett. They joined me to have a conversation around how sport can be a strategic lever for inclusion. Strategic lever for inclusion. Remember this, because we're going to be talking a lot about strategy and lever, meaning not incremental, not the same things that we've been doing, but really how do we amplify and accelerate that work. And we had a conversation around connection and the positive outcomes for young people and the communities around them. So spoiler alert, some of those themes are going to be continued in today's conversation, but we're going to build on that, because since then a lot of great work has been happening. You heard Matt talk about the MOVE Fund, Well, it's evolving and it's been gaining momentum, and there is real change that is happening through collaboration. And coalitions are an essential part of that. Coalitions really are what make it possible to have real local impact and to scale that so that everyone can have an opportunity at having those same benefits in their communities, and so that we're actually creating the active, inclusive world that we all dream about living in. And that's why I'm here today with these incredible leaders who are advancing the vision of the MOVE Fund. Now, you heard from Matt what the MOVE Fund includes, and just to reiterate that, it's an initiative that's focused on strengthening coalitions that are transforming youth sport in communities across the United States. Strengthening coalitions, transforming youth sports, right? And these coalitions are super important because they are bringing together grassroots leaders, community organizations, schools, recreation and parks, and advocates who are working collectively, not competitively, collectively to improve youth sport access and experiences. Truly, I'm so grateful to be joined by this group here because none of the work that we're doing would be possible without them. And we know it because we're seeing it being proved time and time again. And soon you'll know it because you will hear about directly from them. So with that, let's dive in. And Austin, I was really not ready for how cold it was outside. You know, I'm a New York girl, so I really should have been. And I did pack appropriately, so I did have options. But now I'm going to remove the jacket because I think I'm warm enough. Thank you for allowing this change. Appreciate you all. Appreciate you all. It's getting warm in here. We're going to warm it up some more. Incredible leaders. I am going to ask you, actually, I know Matt introduced you all here, but I'd love for you to take a minute to introduce yourselves and the organizations that you're working in, and specifically how you're seeing the power of sport, and if there was also for you just a personal moment where it clicked just how powerful sport can be to drive change. And Beth, we're going to start with you.
Thank you. We were tricked down here with the weather, so don't feel bad. My name is Beth Devine. I've been the executive director of the Philadelphia Youth Sports Collaborative for 10 years now. And personally, I grew up in a neighborhood where I could walk to a park, where we belonged to a pool. And I was the kid that went down and just stood there until some coach would be like, get this kid a shirt, you know, because I followed the older kids down to the park. So sports is sort of where I found my people. I was like a little bit of a bookworm, kind of a dork, right? So, but when I went down to the park, I found my people. I found my people at the pool when I joined the swim team. And, you know, just building yourself with that group is really the reason I sit in this chair. I've been lucky enough to work in sports my whole life, which, what a job, right? In different capacities, but this one being the most important. But I'll say that before I got this job, I was asked to put together a basketball clinic. I was a basketball person growing up and through college and stuff. And we put together this really cool event in Philly where the 6 Division I women's teams would come to the gym and the girls would come and they'd do a clinic. And the first time we did it, it was packed, parents everywhere, kids everywhere. We were like, oh, okay, this is great. And the parents came up and said, well, now what do we do? I said, well, what do you mean, what do? You go to your school and get on your school team. And they were like, well, we don't have a school team. I said, oh, well, what about, do you have a rec center? Well, yeah, but they don't have teams and they don't have practices and clinics. And all of a sudden, it was like somebody flipped a switch. And I just thought, wait a minute. Why does that, I live 4 miles from the city line. Why does my access did my access as a kid look so different than what I'm seeing here? And that was it. I think that day I became an advocate. And then, you know, the blessings from above, I got this job because that's what my job is to try to like level the playing field. I know we say it all the time, but it's true. We're trying to really just balance it out. And so I think that was my moment. And what I know about sports and what it did for me, I don't think about like what kids don't have. I think about what they deserve, and they deserve that. They deserve that experience, and so that brought me here.
Great.
Thank you.
Happy you're here with us. Also, you heard it here. Also, a book dork and sport enthusiast. Powerful combination. Just, you know, I put that out there. Jeremiah, over to you.
Yes, so I have the honor and privilege of being here because of two transformational organizations such as Sport for Impact and the Players Coalition, two athlete-led nonprofit organizations. One, Sport for Impact, whose focus is on community legacy building for athletes professionally, collegiately, and helping them build their brands and legacies outside of their sport, and how that influences the communities that they're from. And Players Coalition, another athlete-led nonprofit organization that focuses on racial equities, social injustices in the world. And why are those two organizations so important? Because it connects to my experience in sport. And my experience, growing up in Brooklyn, New York, in an impoverished environment where when I looked in the mirror, like most young men and women who come from lack, feel as the only thing that they can do is run really, really fast, jump really, really high, and that was me. And I went from that to signing a contract to play professionally in the NFL with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and before I could even make it through my rookie season, the doctor told me I could no longer play the game that I attached my entire identity to. And there goes this little boy who runs into a department store that I was working in shortly after my professional career ended. And he goes, "Mommy, that's my hero." And when he called me his hero, I got emotional because I did not know who I was outside of my sport. And he said that I was his hero because I was able to play my sport and compete in my sport at the highest level. So having the opportunity to serve alongside incredible people here on this panel, Players Coalition, Sport for Impact, it is a full circle answer to a prayer that I get to advocate for young people here today so that they know not just that they're more than an athlete, but why.
You want to hear more, don't you? Yeah, me too. Good news. We're going to come back. We're going to come back to Jeremiah. Thanks, Jeremiah. And Pharlone.
Who wants to follow that? Like, come on. Sheesh. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Pharlone Toussaint. I represent the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport. And I grew up as the child of a Haitian immigrant mother who struggled with mental health challenges. So for me, sport wasn't just about recreation. It was actually like a revolutionary tool, like to play in the face of poverty and oppression and all of the things that tell you not to go outside and play because you're too poor or you don't have a place to play. For me, it was really revolutionary to still do it in the face of all of those obstacles. It was structure, safety, belonging during a time where most of the time things felt unstable because we had to move every time the rent was due. I participated in a Black-led sport-based youth development program, and that fundamentally shaped how I saw the world because I saw these two Black leaders in Mission Hill in Boston, Massachusetts. If you're familiar with the Mission Hill community, that's where Malcolm X grew up. And this Black couple created this program for kids in the neighborhood, and they would tell us, hey, the funding people are coming today. So when they come, you make sure you tell them how much fun you're having, how incredible this organization is, and how you want them to be here in your neighborhood. And that rose my awareness around like, okay, well, they live in this neighborhood, and they are bringing resources into this neighborhood so that I can have these experiences. I can do that too. And it showed me that sport can be so much more than competition. It can be a tool for leadership, community organizing, and healing. Those early experiences really set me on my path today, where I have spent the last 18 years of my life working to create systems for young people like myself to have the same kinds of leaders and coaches like the ones I had. For me, I may have not risen to the ability to play professionally, but I am a professional activist. from working at local parks and rec departments to community relations teams at the Boston Celtics and becoming a grant maker at Global Sports Foundations. I have spent my entire life, my entire adult career, harnessing the power of sport for social change. And so it is truly life's work to be here and sharing this stage with these incredible people, for sure.
I guess that's how you do the follow-up. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. I told you we had an incredible panel, and they're just making an honest woman out of me. I'm so grateful. Pharlone, you opened it up actually. You mentioned mental health in your response, and I'm gonna stick with you for a minute because we're right now in a moment where youth well-being, mental health, and social connectedness are all part of this national conversation. At the same time, there's a lot of really positive buzz around sports and youth sports. And so I'm curious from your perspective, how, is there a way, how can we use all this heightened focus around this area to really create a catalyst to reimagine how youth sport, the youth sport ecosystem specifically, can really better serve young people?
Absolutely. We're in a moment where 3 major youth crises are converging: mental health, social isolation, and declining physical activity. What's powerful about sport is that it sits at the center, at the intersection of all 3 of those things. It's one of the few places where young people are already showing up excited and engaged. When designed intentionally, sport naturally combines these 3 magical ingredients that our friend Dr. Bruce Perry, who is from the neurosequential model in therapeutics, I know that sounds very fancy, but I want to make sure I give him his credit because his 30 years of research is what really is the foundation of our work at CHJS. We've just found a way to communicate it to coaches. And so Dr. Perry talks about 3 very important magical things: movement, relationships, and manageable challenges. Those 3 things are critical for healthy development, and they happen naturally in sport. You don't have to do anything extra. They already happen when done intentionally. And that means sport isn't just recreation. It can be one of the most scalable platforms we have to support youth in their well-being. If you have a gym, you have a school, you have a park, sport is probably happening there. And so we have a public health tool, we have a mental health tool, we have a violence prevention tool that is at our fingertips.
Yeah. Well, tying that a little bit to Matt's intro, right? We have this great buzz, we have these great tools. It's kind of like ready-made, it's kind of like tag me in, put me in type of situation. And we have these global sports moments. And so Jeremiah, coming over to you with that, to bridge that, because we are in a pivotal moment. We have a ton of these sports moments on the horizon. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. We know we're going to be energized, we're going to be excited and yelling, and you all know what I'm talking about, right? Like the Saturday, Monday, choose your sport, choose your moment. You know that it's in there, and that is really powerful. It's not just exciting, it's powerful energy that you can use. But oftentimes when we have these global sports moments, and a lot of them happening here soon and already happening, we're not having that conversation, right? We're talking more around peak performance, the big win, the MVP, all great things, by the way. We love those things too. But we're not really talking about how youth sport is, and sport just generally is more than just about the competition, that it really can have an impact on you much longer, extend beyond that moment on the field or on the court. And so, Jeremiah, you've been living this, and can you help us think about how we can change the narrative around the positive impact and really broadening people's imaginations around how we can use sport and bring that into our community so that young people can be thriving not just on the field but also in life?
Incredible question, and I had the honor to be, in Portland at Nike's headquarters during the Move Fund, and what really captured my heart was the moment there was an emphasis on coaches' development. And when we talk about the wins and losses and achievement being the center of sports, and specifically youth sports, it's how many stats, or now it's who has the biggest NIL deal, or it's a numbers game. And although in leadership in every capacity transaction is important, Move Fund and Nike. I mean, I'm just, man, when I say answer to a prayer, to be with people who focus not just on transaction and understand the importance of it, but transformation. And what I mean by transformation is shifting the language that we use with how coaches are being developed. And what I mean by the development of coaches is getting them to understand that, like, you winning, you losing is important. But the young people that you are in control of their experiences, they're watching you. They're watching how you choose to show up every single day and the language that we choose. And I'll say this from my personal experience, being fortunate to play in the NFL and not have a career but an incredible experience, it is this. I truly believe that my coaches were good people who had the intent for me they cared about me. However, oftentimes intent and impact are oftentimes misaligned to where they had the intent for me to, be a great young man, but they never focused on the young man. They only focused on the athlete. So when I hear organizations like Nike, who the world could say, oh, that's a transactional company, talk about like the transformation of its coaches and getting them the proper information so that we can move that conversation forward is the work that needs to be done. And it starts with how we develop our coaches and getting them to understand, lead with transformation, lead with developing someone outside of their respective sport so that when the game is over, because if you're Tom Brady and you play 20-something years or LeBron James who plays 23, at some point the ball stops bouncing and there's no more touchdowns to score. And who are you? And coaches have a major responsibility in that development, not just transactionally, but transformationally as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jamar. It's so true. I mean, we see this over time and time again. Coaches are mission critical, right? They can really create a whole new universe and open up opportunity, or they can really squash it. And it's in our, you hear us talking about it because it's in our DNA, right? Nike was founded on a relationship between an athlete and his coach. 50 years plus, we're still at it. It's really, something that we believe but also see. And also, as you're sitting here, I often think about there's the self-proclaimed coach, we've got our volunteer coaches, we've got our professional coaches. But whether you know this or not, you are either a voluntary or involuntary or an aware or unconsciously already a coach, right? Because somebody is taking their cues from how you're showing up in their lives, and that is as hyper local as you get, right? Like the people in your house, the people that you're interacting, all the way to whether you're out there coaching kids or youth or any other types of situations. And if you have a job and you're working with people, those are coaching opportunities all day long, every single day, which brings me to you, Beth. And you're like, exactly how does that bring me to you? I'm going to get there. 'Cause Beth is working with a whole lot of people, and really, she said in her intro, she's working with schools, she's working with parks and recreations centers, and also, astoundingly, is working alongside more than 170 community organizations. More than 170 community organizations to increase access to sport space youth development programs for every child in Philadelphia. That's really amazing. I mean, that's just, I repeat it because I want people to really take in, not just one or 10 or something, like more than 170. That's a lot of organizations and people and communities that you're impacting. And so, which means you've got a really important perspective, from where you sit. How does that work? And why is this a pivotal moment for us to be rethinking how youth sport is structured?
Yeah, it is a lot of people, and we have a good team that tries to keep everybody straight. But I think that when I think about Philly right now and why it's a pivotal moment in our space, it's 2026, if you hadn't heard. We have a semi-quincentennial. I will not say that word again. We have the MLB All-Star Game coming. We have the World Cup coming for 6 games. So nobody's not talking about sport in the city of Philadelphia right now. But where our job comes in is what's happening is that's the, you know, financial side of sport is what everybody's talking about. How many hotel rooms and how much money all these things are going to bring to the city of Philadelphia. And if you know Philadelphia at all, it's a city of neighborhoods. And so what our responsibility as the Philadelphia Youth Sports Collaborative is to make sure that we're elevating the work and the experience of the neighborhood-based organizations that are bringing soccer to young people, that are bringing baseball and bat and ball sports, softball, quickball to young people. What's happening at the rec centers? Because unfortunately, you know, the people getting tickets to these events are not from Philadelphia. They're not doing necessarily work in Philadelphia. So we have to elevate that story. And so why I think it's so pivotal right now is we have to make sure that the organizations that do this work every day in our neighborhoods, in our rec centers, are being seen and heard. You know, we're working right now with a task force to talk about youth sports and safety and how we can utilize youth sport to keep kids safe. And something that was said in one of the meetings that was so impactful was like, we're the experts, but no one's letting us talk. And these are the moments that can be game changers when you elevate those stories. Because what we know is that people working in the neighborhoods are in it. They're in the work. And, you know, we sit in a position where we're bringing people together to talk about the issues and the barriers that kids are seeing. And we have to take the information that we learn from across our organizations, but more importantly, get our organizations involved in these conversations. You can't keep having meetings. You have to get people out to see the work. And so I think the other piece of this is when you think about like the increased professionalization of youth sport, the venture capitalists getting involved and all that, that really just takes it further away from the neighborhood-based work. That's so incredible, so amazing. And that's our job, is we really have to kind of take this moment of all the eyes on Philly and turn it into the movement, which is, let's not just throw a couple mini pitches up for some sponsor logos, but let's really activate spaces. Let's think about what's needed from the community-based level so that we can then, when all this goes away, we make sure that that story has been told and resources have been allocated. And so when we get in with, people are like, oh, what are you doing for the World Cup? And I'm like, we're just trying to get them to pay attention. You know, like we know what it'll look like. So if we can get in the room and say, it's great to have more mini pitches, it's even more important to make sure that the legacy gifts can go to community-based providers, you know? So we try to elevate that story in that work, but there's a lot coming, so it's our job to kind of be everywhere and force ourselves into more rooms than we normally do and just hope that it pays off. I think the idea being hopefully that there's a place for the professionalized sport. That's not going away. That train has left the station. But we can crowd it out. Like we can make sure that kids have access at their rec centers, at their schools, so that they can be in healthy sport community situations. And then if they want to do other things later, that's great, but we gotta get the community side recognized.
Yeah. And I think, and just building on that, Pharlone, I'm coming back to you because we love sport, all the sports, at all the levels, for all the people, everywhere, all around the world. And we know that while, sport in and of itself, sport for the sake of sport, amazing, awesome, and there are greater impacts, right? It's when we're talking about bringing sport into the life of young people, we're also thinking about their social and emotional well-being. And so talk a little bit about that, Pharlone, like just how it impacts that, how that comes, how that connects, and some of the benefits from that.
Yeah, for sure. One of the reasons sport is so powerful is biological. Many young people today are carrying significant stress and trauma. We know that from the pandemic, but we knew that from a long time ago. We know that in epigenetics. We know that, that's nothing new. When the brain is stuck in a constant state of stress, it becomes very hard to focus, to regulate your emotions, to even build relationships. In our world, we call that dysregulation. The good news is that the brain can heal, And sport creates the conditions to help do so. So I'll go a little bit deeper into this, but I want to be very descriptive about those three things I mentioned earlier. The first is that trust is the antidote to stress. I'm going to say that again. Trust is the antidote to stress. Okay? What that means is that when you're stressed, what you need most is connection. And so sport is naturally positioned to do that. Because if you have a good and trained coach, they know how to connect with you. And if you're a coach that's struggling with making connection with your young people, we are happy to help you with that. Next, there is this thing we call patterned, rhythmic, repetitive activity. And I'll just cut to the chase here and explain to you that there is a rhythm that you get when you are in the most safest state you could ever possibly be in, and that's in your mother's womb. And that rhythm is her heartbeat. And that is just a naturally, in your DNA, rhythm is a part of your ability to stabilize. And so movement is actually inherently in your DNA, that rhythm that's required to help you regulate, get back to baseline. It's something that's happening in sport. We take it for granted. It's biological. It's necessary for healing, right? And then the next thing is manageable stress. The opposite of being stressed out and being freaked out and being dysregulated isn't no stress, right? What that means is I can't put you in a bubble and wrap you and save you from what's happening. That's not going to prepare you. Resilience is not something that you learn. It's something that you experience. You have to experience it, right? And so what we hope to do, what happens in that social emotional piece is, you know, in sport, when you're learning something new, that's a little stressful, right? But it's not so stressful that it freaks you out. But when you get it, you're like, oh, I can do that. I didn't die, right? You don't go into the gym trying to lift 100 pounds, right? You go in there and you start at 10. And then you go in there and you get to 20, right? That is managed and controlled stress. What that does is teach you resilience. And if you continue to understand that, you can do anything in the world. So those three ingredients, when they're intentionally combined, sport becomes more than play. It becomes a powerful mental health intervention that can reach young people at scale. One thing that's really important to say clearly is that helping young people build resilience does not mean we ignore the systems causing harm, okay? I want to make that very clear. We still have to address inequity, poverty, and structural barriers. But while we're doing that work, we also have a responsibility to create environments where young people feel safe, connected, and can grow. And positive youth sport can do that.
Thank you. And I mean, is there a more powerful use of that mic than the heartbeat? I mean, beautifully done. You know, and we're so lucky to be joined by you, Jeremiah, because everything that Pharlone just talked about, you've lived through, right? And with your aspirations to be a professional athlete, you were a professional athlete, and you continue to bring sport into your life post that experience as well. And so can you just share with us, you know, as you reflect on your journey, how has sport shaped how you approach challenges and growth?
Yeah, so for me, one, I wish I had that information, or my coaches had that information, because for me, for many years, and even now in 2026, you'll hear coaches, and I used to be that coach pre-therapy that would, you know, harp on, as an athlete, you have transferable skills, right? And you may have heard that sitting here is like, oh, you have transferable skills of time management and, you know, being regulated and discipline and resilience. And what happens is we're told that we have these skills, but we are never taught how to use these skills in different environments. And that is where, for me, like, sport has really helped me understand that, like, hard times don't happen to me, they happen for me, you know, and having that mentality has really put me in a position to weather some really, really difficult storms. You know, when I could no longer play the game of football, See, most people thought that it was like, oh, you're great. And it was like, no, I'm not, because I did not know how to regulate myself. Like, I had the discipline and the strength or the muscles to, compete at a high level, but I did not have those same muscles to navigate depression, to navigate suicidal ideations. But it was me leaning on my experience in sport to know that community is what is going to put me in a position. And because I'm trying to do this by myself, I don't have the answer. So like, sport has really, for me, it's really been about community, and the importance of a group of people collectively coming together that we all have a unique skill set and a set of information and tools and resources that if we come together, we can learn. But here's the thing in closing is, as an athlete who had the opportunity to compete at the highest level, we often have to unlearn what competition really means. Because when you lead from, or your heart posture is, I'm competing against you, I'm competing against you, when we actually want the same thing, but the athlete in me, I don't know how to see it any different. So therapy really helped me regulate myself and really helped me unlearn that the truest way to compete at the highest level is to collaborate with others. And in collaborating with others, it not only provided purpose in my life, it actually saved my life.
That's wonderful. Jeremiah, your response is just, I hope everyone agrees, like, we want these experiences for kids as early and as often in their lives. We want as many communities to get it as soon as possible. And I think, as you were talking about just having to relearn and redefine what competition is, and some of the therapy piece, I'm wondering, like, Beth, I'm going to move to you, and I'm wondering if coalition building is maybe the it's true for, or like, it's true for organizations as well, right? I think what's driving the change is that in the coalitions, you're not having to compete against each other for funds and resources, et cetera. It's really about pulling together, but that requires a mindset shift as well, right? It's almost like this process that you've described has to happen for different groups who have the same shared vision, want the same positive impact, are also so hungry for that change and to see that change in their communities, but are not necessarily pulling together. And so maybe the way forward is, that the coalition mindset and that shift there. And so, Beth, you've been in this work, for a while, and it's for sure have had some great success in it. I wonder for others, if you can describe just what it looked like early on for the Philadelphia Youth Sports Collaborative. What are some of the lessons and strategies that really helped you all move forward and really think about growing those efforts just from hyperlocal to just making that a citywide movement for youth?
Yeah, I think over time we've learned a ton. We outlasted a pandemic, but I think the things that where we see collaboration really working. First, you need data. You need to prove what you're working on, or show what you want to be working on and why. And then you need the right partners to come in and have like a shared vision. It doesn't work when the collaboration PYSC sits down and says, okay, folks, we're going to get together and we're going to fix this problem, and here's how we're going to do it. Like, people know their neighborhoods, people know their kids, people know their rec centers. No one else can bring that knowledge to the table. So we had to get the right people around the table to address the right things. And I think that listening and gathering that information helps us to really address certain things that are going on in the city. And I think an example that kind of encompasses all of this is the creation of what's called the Octavius Caddo League. Look them up. It's pretty cool icon for the kids of Philadelphia. And we're addressing the issue of the lack of access to bat and ball sports for kids in particular areas of the city: North Philly, West Philly, Southwest Philly. Everyone say, oh, they don't have baseball. And it's like, well, what are you doing? Like, let's go. So we brought people from all those neighborhoods around the table. We thought about where the fields were. We got with Parks and Rec. They had pieces of the solution. We had community organizations that had pieces of the solution. We brought the Philadelphia Phillies into the conversation, and they had pieces of the solution. And now what we have is an introductory 12-location quick ball league where the kids don't have hand-me-downs. They have jerseys, they have pants, they have proper everything. And the kids are wearing their rec center name on their shirts. And now there's this sense of community pride that's happening. We're seeing parents coming out and getting T-shirts, and they're wearing their, and so, and my team was just so patient and incredible in putting this together. And the mayor is now she funded it, so the mayor is now out talking about her Little League, right? But that's the movement. That's what you need, but it takes all this coordination and people coming together with the right resources to move it forward. It took a while to get that going, but now we actually had to close off the number of sites this year just because it went from 4 to 12 very quickly, so we're accommodating that. And those are the kinds of pilots that an organization like PYIC can help put together. So without us there, I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened. I would have said you would have had to try to figure out who was going to align all this, and that's why we're a little bit lucky in Philadelphia to have a group like ours, because we can do all that alignment. That's our job. So collaboration works, and I think when we think about collaboration on the national scale, particularly with the MOVE Fund, like we don't want to compete against our members for funding. And even better, we have funds that we get from the city to distribute to our membership. So like the last thing we want to be doing is entering all the same funding pools. So the MOVE Fund has really helped us kind of stay on the sideline of the funding mix in Philadelphia so that we are seen as a working partner, an active partner, and not a competitor, because I know collaboration's tough when people are worried about who's at the table.
Yeah, sure. So, you've just given like a how-to, right? I hope people were taking notes. If not, we will share those back with you as well, because I think there's super, great recommendations there, but also not more than work. Like it worked. It's a proven strategy, actually. And one of the takeaways from that is just the collaboration works, but also it's both personal and an opportunity for systems change. And so this next question is for I'm going to start with you, Jeremiah, but I'm coming over to then Pharlone around. From a personal standpoint, you have this great platform for advocacy. Right? And I hope that some of what Beth has shared provides a positive impetus for how you bring that change for young people. And so share a little bit about how you think about that for how the impact of the collaboration and how that comes through to creating more opportunities for young people.
100%. And post my NFL experience, I thought that this world would actually be a better place without me in it. And it wasn't until I entered education as a school educator, then evolved into a school administrator, that I realized that the decisions that we were making for other people, we did not have them at the table as a part of that conversation. And I realized that in terms of funding, there are people such as professional athletes who can play a huge role in advocating for the necessary funds because we have the influence. In an organization like the Players Coalition, I've seen this happen where collectively professional athletes, current and former athletes, coming together and being a part of 30 pieces of legislation, right? And one of those being advocating for $1.5 billion in education in Massachusetts, right? Like, how powerful is that to leverage our platform to provide equitable opportunities for the next generation, and having the opportunity to, serve alongside incredible people like Anquan Bolding and Malcolm Jenkins, who founded the Players Coalition. It really put us in a position to provide that opportunity for the next generation. And I'm just grateful that it doesn't just stop with them and me on this stage, but it starts with continuing to amplify just the next generation of youth, primarily in education, police and community relations, and wealth building as another form of advocacy that we really focus on.
Yeah, well, we're grateful too, because it's so, we all heard it in his response, just how personal it is. And it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability and to share that. And, you know, everybody's wondering, you know, will it make a difference? And you're making a difference from one to the many and the many to one, and it's really beautiful, so thank you. And, you know, it's so personal, and also we've got a whole world to change, right? So, you know, how we stitch this all up into system change. Talk to us about how how collaboration and coalitions can be a strategy for that.
Sure. I think, you know, one piece I will say, I'm a huge history buff, and, you know, I do a lot of studying the work of the civil rights leaders and SNCC and other folks who they've done this already, right? So what we're doing in sport isn't necessarily innovative other than the fact that it's happening in sports, right? We are pulling from successful movements like the Montgomery Boy Bus boycott, like, you know, Black Voters Matter, right? Like, and taking these lessons that we know are successful and integrating them into the sports lens. You know, one of the biggest challenges in youth sport in particular is that incredible organizations are doing great work in their communities, but they're often doing it in isolation. And they're competing for limited funding, reinventing solutions, and struggling to like really, you know, maximize that impact or scale that impact up. I think, you know, some of the most innovative things I know I've seen is, again, taking from the success of these movements, you know, listening to the people who have the lived experiences on the ground, engaging those folks in the solution so they can be the long-term sustainable force for that work moving forward, right? That's the system that has worked every single time. Unfortunately, when we don't learn from history and we try to do these things at that national level without recognizing that you need that local energy, that local effort to be engaged, you will lose, right? I think, you know, that's one of the most important things that I know is happening in this MOVE Fund, in bringing these coalitions from all over the country together. You know, that's why coalition work has become so important. Individual organizations can change lives, but coalitions can change systems. At CHJS, we're helping to connect funders, nonprofits, professional sports teams, community organizations, all to align under these shared goals. And when they start working together, the impact multiplies, whether it's improving coach training or expanding access or influencing policy. I think, you know, we're taking, again, the legacies from others in the past and bringing those great learnings into the sports world. And we're already seeing what that looks like. Matt mentioned earlier, you know, I was actually a part of the team that helped to advocate for the $15 million of funding in Chicago. I remember spending many months in Springfield, Illinois, talking to politicians because they worked for us, right? Making sure they were working for us. And it wasn't, you know, finding funding for education or finding funding for, it was funding for youth sport, specifically for youth sport and violence prevention. And so I think there are some really innovative strategies that we've picked up from our ancestors from the past, and we're just integrating them into the sports lens in a way that we've seen very impactful in all over the country.
So what I'm hearing from you, Pharlone, is innovation can be legacy, and if you stick to it, it can be legendary. So thank you for that. And team, I know it's unbelievable. We're almost at time, and so I have to do that last question. And so our last question, so we are, we're a brand of inspiration. We're Nike, we're Just Do It. So I'm gonna ask each one of you, and beginning with you, Beth, Jeremiah, and Pharlone, what gives you hope for the future? And again, in the spirit of Just Do It, what's one action that everyone sitting here listening can take, not tomorrow, but today? So Beth, starting with you.
I think what gives me hope is the openness with which organizations, city leadership, national colleagues, the openness with which they come to the table to support this kind of work. We love all sport, but this kind of work is different. And so I'm really hopeful because, when we talk to our politicians, we always say, we're the easiest conversation you're going to have all day. We're not coming in with anything that's going to rattle cages. Like we're coming in to talk about youth sports, and they do. They love that conversation because they want to help. And so I think that gives me hope that they're from a person who's a collaborator. The collaborations aren't hard. I think the solutions can be hard, the strategies can be hard, but the collaborations themselves come together pretty readily. And I think that one of the things that I think is amazing on the national scale is how this movement has grown over the past handful of years. I mean, we've been partnered with CHJS for years. And to see the growth of them and the growth of all the cities and the growth of the MOVE Fund and CSEC, the Coalitions for Sport Equity, like there's just so many people that are doing this work, so we can learn more and we can strategize more and we can amplify more. So that's good stuff.
Thank you. Jeremiah?
Yeah, so what gives me hope is that more people are starting to see sport as a tool for development, developing young people beyond just the X's and O's of their sport, so that young people, when they look in the mirror, they don't just see how fast they can run, how high they can jump, how many touchdowns or points that they can score, but actually see themselves as a solution to a specific problem in this world, so that when the game is over, they know that they're a solution. And what gives me hope is, being a part of organizations like Sport for Impact, where we're leveraging athletes' identity in their sport and helping them build their brands outside and influencing not only just youth athletes, but also coaches that support their development. And just being here gives me hope, because as a little black boy growing up in Brooklyn, New York, I would have never thought that I would have the opportunity to serve alongside not just amazing leaders, but people. And it is just an honor to just be an example of what more than an athlete really is. And this here today gives me hope.
Thank you. Over to you.
What gives me hope is collective action, right? That's what I'm here for. In a very polarized moment in our country, youth sports are one of the few things I think almost everyone can agree on, right? We all want safe, accessible, and fun sports for kids, right? Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. People may disagree about a lot, but I think they generally agree that sports should be safe, fun, and accessible for all kids. And I think we should take advantage of that common desire. That makes sport a rare space where diverse groups can come together around shared values and build something positive for the next generation. I'd encourage people here today to think about their specific unique role in making sport the true powerful tool that we need it to be all over this country. So, if you're a funder, I'm going to ask you to explore how youth sport can be a strategic investment in mental health, community health, belonging, violence prevention. Think about that, right? If you're a parent, start asking questions about how your sports programs are structured. Are the coaches trained in your neighborhood or in your community? Are young people being supported as whole human beings? Ask them that. And if you're a community leader, look at how sport can be used to connect young people to resources and opportunity. The opportunity in front of us is not just about improving sport. It's using sport as a platform to strengthen communities. The last thing I just might add here is that one of the things I believe we're missing in our impact work is healing. We are leaving healing out of the equation in a way that I think is showing us in real time what the world looks like when we leave healing out of the conversation. And at CHJS, we believe that there is no social change, there is no personal change, there is no economic change without healing in the conversation.
Well, you all give me hope, so thank you for being just amazing and incredible. I've got a few actions for you all too, because I'm Nike, so I have to. One is, please check out the MoveFund.org. You will see who's involved. You might find ways for yourself to get involved, whether it's individually, through an organization, supporting locally. There might be a local coalition near you. You might want to start a coalition near you. So many options there, so that's themovefund.org. You've got to use every single word. Don't be confused. Don't think it's just MoveFund. It's themovefund.org. Also, I want you all to remember that you're an athlete, right? We said that at the top of the session. At the end of the session, you heard it again. And I want you to think about it through the lens of what some of our panelists here have shared, right? You're an athlete with a body that moves, that recovers, that heals, that pushes, and that voluntarily or unconsciously is putting out an example to the world in every touch point that you have with people. And one very immediate action is join our reception right after this. Do not go. Resist the desire to do whatever is next that does not involve staying. Long way to say, stay with us, because Pharlone is going to take us through an exercise that you will not get anywhere else. That's not true. You might get it in your local communities if you work with the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport, but you'll never get it like this with this group of people, because this group of people is only here at South by Southwest today, right now. So with that, I'm going to say, please join me in thanking this incredible panel. And you can leave the room, but don't leave the right outside, just only to go right out here. So yeah, it's right here, very near. So thank you. Thanks so much for spending your time with us today.